Tonight's speech is entitled The Upside of Richard M. Daley, and I'm going to speak tonight about the positive aspects of Richard M. Daley's tenure as mayor of the city of Chicago. In speech 1, I started describing Richard M. Daley as one of the most liberal Democrats America has ever known, and I will explain that further in speech 3. In speech 3, I'll explain some of my criticisms of Richard M. Daley's mayorship. But tonight's speech is focused more on Richard M. Daley's positive contributions as mayor of the city of Chicago. As a kid and as a teenager, many times I took the Rock Island Railroad trip to downtown Chicago. I was working for an attorney, and the attorney was my father. He was a personal injury attorney who started his career by representing the Santa Fe Railroad. And I would go downtown for my summer jobs, and I would answer trial call for my dad or file routine motions for my dad as a teenager when I first started working. I began working in the 7th grade. And as those wheels roll on the train and you move closer and closer to downtown Chicago, what you see outside your train window is rows and rows and rows of Chicago houses. And as a kid, I would look at those houses and think to myself, my God, some of this neighborhood really is in need of urban renewal. Some of those houses were old houses from the 1900s sometimes, and they had never been once facelifted in any way. And so now enter Richard M. Daley as mayor of Chicago. And looking at what Mayor Daley accomplished as mayor, I think to myself, he took that same Rock Island train ride that I took, and he came to the same conclusion that I came to. So the number one thing that Mayor Daley got accomplished as mayor was that he was a phenomenal urban planner. He's unbelievable on what he got accomplished as an urban planner. He got maybe 5 times more physicality accomplished than his father could get done as an urban planner. So when you think about the great urban designers Mies van der Rohe and Frank Lloyd Wright, Mayor Daley not only stood there right with them as a great urban planner, but he sometimes even beat them for what his urban plan was. So may you be remembered, Mayor Daley, as one of the most phenomenal urban planners ever to come to America in the last 200 years. You were that great to meet as an urban planner. You were a perfectionist. You outdid yourself, remodeling our city to make it look more perfect as a city. So the number 2 accomplishment of Mayor Daley is that he took Chicago and turned it into the ultimate all-American sports town for tourists to view. I believe that it was actually my vision for the town that we become more of a sports town, and it's got nothing to do with Oprah or Mayor Daley. But I'll try and be polite about it and pretend that it was your idea, not my idea. As a kid, I would observe native Chicagoans and how they act. And in the 60s, in the 70s, and in the 50s too, one thing that was always going on in this town is we were losers at sports. The Cubs would lose, the Sox would lose, then, Hallis couldn't really get the Bears going the right way. And, the people were genuinely depressed in this town because their sports teams were always losing sports teams. And they finally just gave up on the whole idea of the Sox ever winning or the Cubs winning or the Bears ever winning and just accepted the fact that they were losers at sports. So in the 60s, in the days of Gordie Howe and Stan Mikita and Bobby Hull, I can remember getting really excited about the Blackhawks once as they enter into the Stanley Cup. But that's the only real championship I remember from my memories as a kid. So I'm saying I gave some thought at what I'm looking at here, and what I was looking at for 30 years is such depression in residents of the city of Chicago because their sports teams never won. And I looked at the level of depression in people because they're always associated with loser sports teams. I'm telling you that I said the prayer, not you. I said the prayer for the town, not you, and I want to be mayor because of it. And the prayer I said about 1983 to the Blessed Virgin is, please, please take this stigma off of us that we are losers at sports all the time. And please turn our town into what it is today, where most of our sports teams are winning the majority of the time. I say it was me who got something done just once, not Oprah Winfrey, who gets everything done in this town. And the other thing I prayed for is the end of this North versus South mentality regarding sports. Like in the 60s, if you went to a cocktail party or a graduation party in this town, and a South Sider was at the same party that a North Sider was at, the conversation would eventually be all about North Side versus South Side and all about Cubs versus Sox. It was a divided town, very much so in the 60s, where the North Side was a completely different town than the South Side to visit. So a big part of my prayer to the Blessed Virgin is that North Side versus South Side battle, that conversation be stopped finally, stunted, so that it's more of a solidarity mentality starting up in the city of Chicago. So once you get rid of that Hatfield versus McCoy mentality, a North Siders versus South Siders, then you can now have a solidarity thing going on. And once the solidarity is in place, it's so much easier to get a goal accomplished. So what I'm claiming about myself is that I'm the one who initially shifted the car so that the mentality was different. Although it takes a whole group of people to follow up on my prayer to actually get the goal accomplished. I'm not saying I played all the games and got all the ball games won. It took a whole bunch of people to do the follow-up on my prayer. And who did the follow-up the best sometimes was the mayor himself, Richard M. Daley. His decision to get the United Center built and his decision to create a new White Sox park really sealed the deal for us and gave us 25 years of excellence in terms of sports business in this town. In 1983, we basically make a decision to stop being the hog butcher of the world. We gave up our daily meat talk in the town in order to talk sports daily instead. And in speech 3, I'm going to talk about some of the downsides we knew by going with just a single business, the sports business, and what's wrong with being a one-horse town, and what's wrong with the idea of having just one business in our town, sports. So the third major accomplishment from Richard M. Daley as a mayor is his ability to sustain an urban environment in terms of transportation and communications. He was able to sustain our transportation system just as much as generations before him and even update the system quite a bit. His communication system was a good communication system. He kept up with technology just fine. So what I'm thinking really is that we could have very easily become another Detroit. You know, Detroit started suffering quite a bit in the center of its city, in the heart of its city during the 1980s. And by some miracle that Richard M. Daley worked, he really got us over a major pitfall that could have occurred. We could have started slumping so much as a city, we became the 50th largest city in the nation instead of staying the urban center that we are today. So God bless Richard M. Daley and his wife Maggie Daley and their entire family, and we wish the Daley family well in the years to come.